Now let's take a look at the problems William's faced during his reign in terms of Anglo-Saxon rebellion. Obviously, William becomes king in 1066 and embarked on a policy of integration, trying to introduce Normans into powerful positions in Anglo-Saxon society, but alongside already existing Anglo-Saxons. The problem with this is it gives the impression to the Anglo-Saxons that if they continue to rebel, they can force William to leave, which isn't the case. So let's have a look at how that unfolds. The first revolt that you see is the revolt of Edwin and Morcar, obviously two powerful Anglo-Saxon earls. Why did they rebel? Or why did they revolt? Well, Edwin had been told by William that he could marry William's daughter. William, however, broke this promise, causing anger from Edwin, because obviously that marriage would have made him hugely powerful and have given him a relationship with the king. Bishop Odo had been left in charge, operating as regent alongside William Fitz-Osbern, and they had ran the country corruptly, allowing Norman sheriffs and earls to commit land grabs and commit crimes without facing punishment. The lands of Edwin and Morcar had been reduced in size, and the taxes that they had been paid were increased. Not only that, these increased taxes were then being sent to Normandy, William sending money home, effectively running England as a colony. Very annoying for Edwin and Morcar, because as we've discussed, the earldoms during the Anglo-Saxon period were larger, so the earls had more power. Now the size of the earldoms have been reduced, so they have less land, which means less wealth and less power, and the tax they are paying is being sent out of the country to support Normandy. So what happens during the revolt? Some believe that the revolt was simply a dummy run, a test run, to see if William would raise arms to defend England from the rebellion, and William did. William marched north and built castles on the way as a show of strength, intimidating Edwin and Morcar into surrender. So realistically, not much happens during this revolt. William simply marches north and stops it by building castles, and Edwin and Morcar back down. But really, what's going on here is, were they testing William? And it's also obviously, the castles are new to England, so were they testing the effectiveness of castles? Further rebellions you see often involving Edgar Atheling, and also happening largely in the north, because William is in London, not in the north, or even in Normandy, definitely not in the north of England. So the first one involving Robert Cumon. You get the death of Robert Cumon. Cumon had been made the new Earl of Northumbria, picked by William. However, Cumon is a particularly large idiot, and as he travels north, he pillages towns along the way, attacks them and burns them on the way. So by the time he reaches Durham, he is warned by the bishop there that his violence had caused resentment and that people were out to get him. Cumon ignored this bishop's warnings and carried on looting, pillaging, murdering regardless. So Cumon and his soldiers were ambushed by a group of Northumbrians who slaughtered Cumon and his soldiers. This was particularly vexing for William, because even though Cumon had behaved out of line, he was a Norman earl or tenant-in-chief chosen by William. The next rebellion you see is the uprising in York. A similar uprising to this also happened in York, and Edgar the Atheling came down from Scotland to join the rebels. William, however, arrives with a huge army and trashes the town of York. Edgar therefore runs away back to Scotland. A new castle was built in the north, and William Fitz-Osbern was installed as castellan, as it was believed he was a canny operator who could squash any further rebellions. William returns to Winchester for an Easter ceremony, which shows how important it was for William to be seen acting out the ceremonies of being king. Again, it's that alliance or allegiance with the church, with God. It's a religious time of year, Easter, and therefore it's important that he is seen in Winchester wearing the crown in a royal ceremony, further aligning himself with the church. The next uprising is the Anglo-Danish attack. Now be careful here because it's going to mention King Sweyn, but this is not King Sweyn. So, in the summer of 1069, King Sweyn of Denmark sent his brother Asbjorn with a fleet to England. The Danes possibly believed that by this time William was vulnerable because effectively he spent the last 3 years dealing with rebellions all around the country and revolts all around the country, dragging his army everywhere. So it's possible that at this point the Danes are just trying to turn the screw that little bit more. Anyway, King Sweyn sends his brother Asbjorn to England. The Danes meet up with Edgar Atheling's troops and they marched on York on the 21st of September. The Normans accidentally set fire to the city and then met with the Anglo-Danish troops and were slaughtered. So the Normans, in defending the city, tried to burn down an area of it, effectively to create a barrier, a wall, but accidentally set fire to the entire city. And then when they meet with the Anglo-Danish troops, they are hammered, they are slaughtered. The Danes, this is where the rebellion rebellion breaks down. The Danes then sail to Lincolnshire, and what's William going to do about it? Well, he simply pays the Danes to leave. They're a big threat to him because they are powerful warriors, so William just pays them to go away, just like previous Anglo-Saxon kings had done in the past. The problem here is, whilst for William it deals with the problem now, effectively the Danes here have got what they wanted because they've been given a load of money. This is why in the past the Vikings had always returned, and now that William's paid them off, they're probably going to return again. The Anglo-Saxon rebels also sort of scattered and the rebellion broke down, and they didn't press further south. The Anglo-Saxons just sort of break up from each other. So by now, we've seen William's policy of integration between the two, and it's resulted in, or rather as a byproduct of it, there's been lots and lots of rebellions. William's been dealing with lots of problems for the last few years. So these cause big frustrations for William. For one, he's been troubleshooting hotspots all over. He's dragging his army all around the country to deal with uprisings and rebellions. Some of the time, he's not even in the country. He's obviously got Normandy to govern as well. The problem he faces is guerrilla warfare. Anglo-Saxon rebels would start creating issues in areas of the country, and then once William or his forces arrived, the Anglo-Saxons would scatter, run away, so effectively left William fighting nobody. There's nobody to fight. But the problem is it dragged his army all around the country, hasn't it? This creates discontent and anger amongst his troops, or frustration amongst his troops. Crucially, though, it is testament to the quality of William's leadership that whilst this might cause frustrations amongst his soldiers, they never mutiny or go against him. They follow all his orders to the letter. They also don't enjoy the winters. William's troops were growing tired and unhappy from the constant marching to hotspots or rebellion hotspots, and when they get there, they find nobody there. Some even becoming sick from the constant trudging around the country. The other problem he's got is that Edgar Atheling is actually the rightful heir, so as long as he exists, Anglo-Saxons will want to try and put him on the throne. Now that Edgar has more military power, more Saxons started to believe that he had the most legitimacy to being king, or most capability to be king. What this means is, because obviously Edgar Atheling's hiding out in Scotland, the north had been a stronghold for rebellion. It was used by the Vikings to invade, as they could rely on support from the Danelaw. So you've got Edgar as a threat in the north. The Vikings keep using the north as a base for their invasions, so William needs to find a solution. The solution to it is the harrying of the north. We'll come to this in more detail in a couple of videos, but William decides to harry the north, lay waste to it, destroy the north, kill who he can find there, and basically make the north uninhabitable. That way, armies and rebels can't stay in the area, can they? William's patience snapped. Brutal. He lays waste to the north, and it achieves what he wanted to do. Further rebellions don't happen that far north. Which brings us to the rebellion of Hereward the Wake, 1070 to 71, after the harrying of the north, which is why it takes place further south. It's the last Anglo-Saxon rebellion we see. Hereward had been an East Anglian thane who'd made an alliance. Let's go into Hereward in a bit more detail. Hereward was an East Anglian thane who'd been off fighting in Normandy and returned to find some of his lands had been taken by Normans. Therefore, what Hereward the Wake did was make an alliance with King Sweyn, who we mentioned earlier. King Sweyn, the king who had of Denmark, who had previously sent his brother over to invade, and his brother has been paid off. So what's King Sweyn doing now? Well, he's seen his brother get paid off, and he thinks, I want some of that for myself. So Hereward the Wake makes an alliance with King Sweyn, who had brought a fleet over. Oh, here you go. Now you're going to the reasons anyway for you. So after exile under Edward the Confessor, Hereward had discovered that his land had been given to a Norman, so he joined other rebels in using guerrilla warfare. This leads us to the attack on Peterborough and the fall of Ely. The Danes and Hereward raided Peterborough Abbey to stop its riches from going to the Normans. They were joined by Morcar, and afterwards Hereward disappeared